Hey guys, welcome to the Kelly Adventures. This is a video that I did on all of the pieces of furniture that I refinished to match the finish from Pottery Barn, specifically the Sausalito finish. I know that there are a ton of videos out there on this, but I just wanted to share what works for me and what I found was the easiest process. It took some trial and error, but in this video I'll go over the summary process and all of the items that I used. This can be done on both solid wood furniture and laminates and veneers. Here are some before and after photos. This furniture is gorgeous both ways, but we decided to refinish our floors, which is another video we have on our channel. And they were a dark red, and we wanted to lighten everything up in the room. So I couldn't really afford to buy all new furniture, so I kind of had to take what I had and refinish it all. So that, it's a big process, but also the existing furniture was kind of worn out with nicks and scratches, and, it just needed to get refreshed. So this is actually a Pottery Barn media table here, and I loved it dark, but again, had to lighten everything up. So I just went with like a more rustic finish, a little heavier on the dry brushing technique, which I'm going to go into in a little bit. So, this is just giving a before and after of everything. Okay, so let's get into the process a little bit. The first step is sanding, and this is optional because some of the items that I have I did sand and others I could not. So, if it's a piece of real wood furniture, then I choose to always sand that if I can. I feel like it looks a little bit, I guess more realistic if you can sand it. And I kind of use a rougher grit because it'll just give it that added texture. But you can absolutely do this on laminate or something that you don't sand. So that brings you to step 2, which is cleaning. You want to make sure that everything is thoroughly cleaned, especially after sanding. And if you're not sanding, you want to just make sure that all of the build up oils and stuff like that are removed before you start so that everything can bond correctly. So that brings you to step 3, which is the bonding primer. I use 1 coat of Sherwin-Williams Extreme Bond Primer, and it doesn't have to be perfect, just you want 1 coat on there to make sure that everything is gonna stick. Number 4 is the base paint. So you're going to put 1 coat of base paint on there, and this is the base that the glaze is going to go on. I used Behr Premium Even Better Beige Satin Enamel, and I was really happy with the way that it looked. I wanted something, a little bit lighter because I was going for that lighter look. And then if you want, you can, choose to do a heavier glaze if you want to do it a little darker. That brings you to the 5th step, which is the glaze. You want to wait and make sure the base coat is dry, and then this will begin to transform your furniture into the unique wood look. I use the Rust-Oleum Java Brown glaze, and I did this with chip brushes and a Linser 5-inch deck brush. The deck brush is absolutely critical for this technique to work correctly. I tried doing it with other brushes and it failed miserably. When I got the Linser brush, the 5-inch one, it's amazing the technique that you can get with this. So I highly recommend. I do have that link in the description. So I worked in sections where I applied some of the glaze with a chip brush, and not too heavily. You want to make sure you cover everywhere, but you don't want to do it too thick, if that makes sense. And then you follow that up with the Linser brush and the deck brush. You just go either vertically or horizontally and do your strokes depending on which way you're going to go, and just work it up and down or across. And you're going to just work that until you get the, desired shade that you want. So if you want a lighter look, you're going to continue to work the brush in whatever stroke fashion you're using. And sometimes if I applied too heavily, I would take rags and just wipe my brush off and then continue to run the brush over the technique. So for spaces that are too small to really get the brush into, I would kind of just take the brush and dab it into those areas and then work it again in the stroke fashion that you're using. So I hope that makes sense. You can kind of see in the video where I did that. And then, yeah, you just keep working it until you get the look that you want, the shade. But one thing I would suggest is that if you are doing this on real wood, you should probably drag the deck brush with the grain because that would look, the most natural. Okay, so the next step is dry brush painting, and you need to wait until all of the glaze is dry. On the can, it says a minimum of 8 hours. This is going to depend on the humidity levels of where you are and what kind of environment you're in. So you just want to make sure that that glaze is thoroughly dry before you apply any other steps or dry brushing. So with the dry brushing, I used the same base paint color, the Behr, the Even Better Beige. You can do it with really anything you want. I have sometimes used like Sherwin-Williams Agreeable Gray and Sherwin-Williams Intellectual Gray to kind of just add a little bit more dimension. It's just adding like a little bit of interest to it. And for this, I use chip brushes. So basically what I would do is I would get a paper plate and I would dip the brush into the paint and then basically just keep dabbing it onto the plate to remove as much of the paint as I could. And then you're just going to very, very lightly stroke the piece of furniture in, gentle, quick strokes. You want it on there just ever so slightly. And if you accidentally put like a little bit too much on, I usually work with a rag so I could just quickly blend it in or wipe it off if that happens. I'm, hopefully going to do a more in-depth video on this, showing me actually applying it to furniture. But, at the time that I did these, I wasn't really planning on doing a video. So this is kind of just like an overview of what I've done and, summary of the technique. The last step is the top coat. And again, you need to make sure all of the paint, dry brushing is dry and everything has had a chance to set. I used 3 coats of Varathane water-based Ultimate Polyurethane in a matte finish. And I applied this with a Purdy paintbrush. I prefer the Purdy brand, but you can use whatever you like. I don't suggest using a foam brush or a chip brush for the polyurethane. And I just prefer a matte finish, but you can use satin or whatever else you prefer. So I use the water-based because if you do use an oil-based polyurethane, it will amber or like yellow over time. So I do prefer the water-based ones. However, oil-based is more protective. So because I'm using the water-based, I do try to do like 3 coats of it. The more coats, obviously, the better protection, especially if it's a piece of furniture that gets a lot of use. The furniture I did, people aren't using it all the time. It's not like a dining room table or anything. So 3 coats, I think, was, a good amount to use on those. Okay, so I guess that is it as far as the summary of the steps, and hopefully I'll have a more in-depth video soon where I'm actually showing you how to apply it on the furniture. It can be a little intimidating at first. I was a little intimidated, but in fact, I think I even did it like twice on the same furniture because I didn't like the way that I did the technique and the glaze. So I didn't like it. I just restarted. I didn't resand or anything, but I repainted the base coat and then I did it again. So you can always do that, if you mess up and it just isn't looking, the way that you want it to, just repaint the base coat and start over again. So I hope this was helpful. And again, I have stuff in the description for the products and things like that. And thank you for watching.